Well, welcome. Welcome. Nice to be back with you all. And many of you shared on this beautiful, really powerful, intense retreat we had this weekend. And so a big bow of respect. You're continuing to show up on the path with an open heart, dedicated consciousness. And this is the way. This is the way. Okay. So here on planet Earth, the last couple of weeks and the last couple of months, if you check in on the news, you'll see there's all these drones or UFOs or some kind of wild thing that's happening here on planet Earth. And I thought, I'd start today just having a little fun with the UFOs and the alien people coming to visit us. But the bottom line here is human beings, we don't know. We don't know what this is. We don't know what these things are that are in the sky. And I would like just to use this as a metaphor about spiritual awakening. If we take a moment and reflect, most of us look at ourselves as these autonomous human beings, and we have our world, our view, our perspective, our way of doing things. And the whole egoic perspective is built on this idea of I know and I control and I maintain and I choose to end what I don't like. I choose to chase the things I do like. But on the spiritual path, our perspective is constantly being challenged. It's constantly being challenged. This very force of Kundalini Shakti is here to challenge our human, tyrannical, authoritarian perspective. And by that, I mean everyone. If you feel into your ego, you'll see it's like a little tyrant about how things should be, what the world is. It creates this whole illusion. And for most of us, we never question it. Now, of course, if you find yourself on the spiritual path, then you are here because you are looking for a greater reality, a greater perspective. And anytime we walk in the direction of God, we're walking in the direction of something greater. And maybe we're not interested in God. Maybe we're just a normal human being and we're in our egoic worldview. And then spontaneously, this Kundalini Shakti is coming into us and awakening something in us. And it's like, well, what is that? What is that? What is God doing? God is here expanding, blowing up, destroying our little human perspective. And if we look at the path, whether it's a path of psychological healing, what does psychological healing do? It destroys your human egoic perspective, the perspective of being a victim or the perspective of being broken or the perspective of being unworthy. If we're on a Tony Robbins self-help, path, again, like that path is going to destroy our limited perspective and move us into an unlimited perspective. If we're on this path of Kundalini Shakti, it's just like God is choosing to destroy our perspective and show us something greater. If we're a non-dual awakening person, it's like, okay, I'm sick of my own mind. I'm inviting the perspective of my mind to be destroyed and to open into something greater. Now, we just had this whole retreat focusing on spiritual empowerment. Spiritual empowerment arises when we choose to consciously embrace a higher perspective. But anytime we do that, our lower perspective is gonna be destroyed. Now, in the olden days, there was this astronomer, I want to call him astrologer, an astronomer named Copernicus. And he started to study the stars And he came to realize that the whole world doesn't revolve around human beings, and Earth being the center. The world revolves around the sun. And the response to him at the time, the response from the religious leaders at the time who controlled the perspective, was one of repression, was one of fight. So in this case, the religious ones were showing up in the form of ego. And Copernicus was showing up with an openness saying, I'm wanting to discover something greater. Something greater. And I'm going to invite us just to look at how we relate to the world. And in this moment, I'm going to invite us to look at how we relate to these UFOs. Are they trying to change the name now? The UAPs, unidentified, I want to call it aerial phenomena, but I think it's unidentified, anomalous phenomena. But how does our ego relate to something new and wild that's coming to planet Earth? So most people, like I was speaking with my oldest daughter, and she was absolutely ignoring it. She's like, no, Dad, I don't want to talk about it. I'm not going to go there. And this is a really common thing within the ego psychology is I don't want to look at something I don't know or I can't figure out or I don't understand. I'm just going to focus on my little egoic reality. And I want to hold on and maintain. And my daughter, developmentally, I'm speaking about my oldest daughter. She's going off to graduate school. She wants to study business. She wants to be successful. This is her reality. I'm going to support her in that. But on the spiritual path, our realities are always being challenged. And if we want to have a healthy, efficient spiritual path, we open to the challenge, we let go of our old view, and we begin to investigate, we begin to question, we begin to open, we begin to see what is this new thing that life is trying to show us. And from purely an evolutionary biological perspective, we're always evolving. Life is always evolving. It's always growing and expanding. If we could go back 400 years and tell people, try to explain to them, it's about a computer or an iPhone or the internet, it wouldn't make any sense. Wouldn't make any sense at all. Wouldn't make any sense. But there was once upon a time, this great Christian master who also studied geology. And if I could remember his name, I think it's Pierre Teilhard Cardin or something like that. He was like an evolutionary biologist. And he started to have this view of a group mind here on planet Earth. He was given this vision. Sri Aurobindo, from this lineage that I'm in, was given this vision of a group mind, a group consciousness. And whether it was the recognition of what Jung discovered, the collective unconsciousness or the collective consciousness, or the realization, or the prophecies, say, of the internet. It's like, how do we relate to the expansion of consciousness? Do we fear it? Do we hunker down and try to control it? Do we resist it? Do we deny it and act like it doesn't exist and just keep going on with our days? And if you look at like the leaders, of this beautiful country of the United States, and like the governor of New Jersey is basically saying, we don't know what these things are, but don't worry about it. Don't worry. It doesn't appear to be a danger to public safety. And so you see all these government officials are trying to put people back to sleep, saying, hey, it doesn't appear to be a danger. It's just trying to quell, people's fears, just trying to relax the fears. Just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I don't know what these things are, but don't worry about it. This is how the ego operates, as it tries to ignore, deny, suppress. Sometimes if we're on the spiritual path, our ego gets sophisticated and tries to spiritually bypass things that we don't know, that we can't understand, that don't make sense to us, and just got to ignore it. Jung had a whole psychology. What happens when we ignore? A shadow develops. And of course, we lose power. But on the spiritual path, the whole path is about our perspective being blown open, being destroyed. And I can tell you once upon a time, many times I've seen different things in the sky that didn't make sense. But one time in particular, I was on a retreat, at this Taramandala Tibetan Buddhist center. And I saw these three objects in the sky. And they were objects that did not make sense to my human mind. Still to this day, my mind cannot put them in a box, because here on planet Earth, our ego looks at objects as something being solid, something having like a solid shell, like, anything. This is an object. It's my chocolate espresso beans. This is an object. It's solid. This is an object. It's solid. Everything is solid, and we know what it is. We touch it. We investigate it with our hard materialistic sciences, and we know what it is. But here I was on retreat, and these three objects came out of the sky, and they were breathing and growing and morphing. They were plasma-like. And it was so utterly bizarre. My consciousness, my human consciousness, could not put it in a box and say, it's this thing. And here I was, there was a bunch of us on this retreat, and we all kind of stopped and were staring at these objects. And then come to later on, we found out everyone in the kitchen was outside staring at these objects. And down the road, there was these turkey hunters, just like good old boys. And they were staring at these objects through their rifle scopes and really checking these things out. And none of us could come to a conclusion of what this was. Even me saying right now, well, this thing was a UFO, it doesn't do it. And in the world of spiritual awakening, I want to clarify here, I'm not here today just to convince anyone of UFOs or alien invasions or any of that. But I want us just to acknowledge this model of the spiritual path, where we are born into a body, we are given an ego psychology that tries to make everything permanent and whole. And what you'll find with Kundalini Shakti is that this force of light will come into you and will light up new realms, new aspects of consciousness that your human self will not know what to do with, but your human self will certainly attempt to co-op and put it in a box of this is good or this is bad. This is frightening. This is unknown and I don't like it. And as spiritual beings, since the beginning of time, we have looked up at the sky. We have looked up at the heavens. We have looked out at this massive universe and wondered, what is my place? What is this all about? I can remember a past life where I was some type of African witch doctor. This was like tens of thousands of years ago. And I had bones and a bone necklace, and I was shaking these bones, but just staring up at the immensity of the universe with this great question of wanting to commune with the hugeness of life. The hugeness of life. Now, if I feel into that lifetime, I could say I had all kinds of friends and family whose only concern was about hunting, killing a wild beast, or fighting with warring tribes or whatever it is. And this is what our ego is good for. As our ego is good for hunting, it's good for fighting, it's good for taking care of the practical stuff here on planet Earth. Make sure that we brush our teeth in the morning and at night. But our spiritual sense of self has always opened to this vast unknown. And we get a sense of empowerment when we open with a sense of faith and trust and a willingness to see, a willingness to explore, a willingness to discover. A willingness to discover a greater perspective. But human beings are these paradoxical creatures. We can love deeply, so deeply. And yet on the flip side, we have an ego psychology that could be vengeful or angry or abusive or harsh. And so it's a very messy experience being human. And as this Kundalini Shakti comes into you, as we begin to awaken, I ask you, do you open to things that you do not understand, that don't make sense, that are difficult or are challenging or burning or are overwhelming? Do you open with a sense of faith and trust and a willingness to see what this is, to commune with what this is? Or do we run away in fear? Do we run away in fear? Do we shut down? Do we grip? Do we contract? Those of you in this group who are willing to open with faith, a faith in the strength of your being, a faith in the intelligence of God, a faith in the innate goodness of life, will have a much quicker and more efficient path than those of you who unconsciously choose to resist or to ignore or to deny. And so I'm going to invite us to shut down our eyes and to feel into our bodies. And if any of you are, tripping a little bit, about what I said about UFOs and this and that, we can just let it go. I want you to be here in your body, in your experience. And I'm going to invite you to investigate this inquiry question of how do you respond to the unknown? And of course, in the context of Kundalini Shakti, the unknown is light coming into you, heat, a fiery divinity, the energies of transformation. How do you relate to your mind expanding and your heart opening? Do you smile and say, yes, I welcome this? Or do you shut down in fear? Or do you open a little bit and then your mind comes forward and says, how can I use this to my advantage? Become rich and successful and famous, or whatever it is. Oh, I'm just going to open a little bit and then I'm going to try to control. And I'm going to invite us just to shine a conscious light on our human reaction to the expanding of our consciousness. Is your mind in control and repressing the whole thing? Is your mind realizing it's not in control and fearing the whole thing? Is your mind realizing I'm not in control and welcoming this whole thing? This whole thing being God, the intelligence of the universe, waking up in you. How do you relate to this most magnificent experience? Do you only like it when it feels blissful and expansive? And do you hate it and resist it when it brings up old trauma or pain or heartache to be cleared, to be emptied, to be released? Do you love it when it feels good? and holy? Do you hate it when it reminds you that you have an eating disorder, or that you're angry with yourself or your spouse, or that there's self-hatred within, or someone or something you need to forgive or release? Do you hate it when it puts pressure on your animal nature? Pressure to heal, to evolve, to release, to let go? So we're really looking at how our human self responds to the unknown, specifically Kundalini Shakti, but we can also speak about the unknown of spiritual awakening. No doubt many of you in this room have been visited by angels, by ascended masters, by beings of light, have seen astral realms. Maybe you have had visits from your mother or father or sister and brother who are in heaven. You've seen great synchronicities and this and that. And please, I don't want us to get lost in those worlds. But I want to ask you, how do you respond? Do you respond from a place of being grounded and rooted and open and discerning? Or do you get lost, chasing egoic things in astral realms? Do you get seduced by astral entities, this kind of silliness? Do you give your power away to forces of darkness or predatory forces, confused energies? How do you respond to the unknown? Do you show up as a goddess, rooted in your power, as a Buddha, rooted in the power, having an absolute faith in your indestructible presence? And so as we investigate here, we see that this spiritual life, this spiritual path, is a wild ride. This human life is a wild ride. A wild ride. A wild ride. And the great question for us is, how do we respond to this wild ride we call life? How will we respond to the internet age? And then as we transition into the AI age, how will we respond to this nuclear age that we're in? With all these weapons and craziness, how will we respond to climate change? How will we respond to these drones and these visitors coming from other dimensions or star systems? And my God, how will we respond to this awakening energy, this brilliant light? How will we respond to the unknown? How will we respond? And so if you feel into your mind will have a traditional egoic program to avoid things which are uncomfortable and chase after things that feel good. But as spiritually awakening, evolving beings, we must look deeper in ourselves. And so I'm going to call you all now to come down into your heart, to come down into the hara. And notice as you come down into your heart, your perspective shifts. Your perspective opens to this presence of love, of a universal love. The heart radiates a universal friendliness, a universal friendliness toward life, a universal friendliness. As you come down into the hara radiates a universal strength and power. A universal strength and power. And I encourage you on this path of awakening to look out at life, to experience life, to engage with life from this universal friendliness of the heart and from this depth of strength in the hara. And as we open to life in this way, you will notice that your consciousness immediately begins to grow and expand and feel a sense of ease. Feel a sense of okayness. Feel a sense of nobility toward life. Because as we open through this lens, this experience of universal friendliness, this absolute strength, we begin to merge with life. And as we begin to merge with life and experience life, we come to know life and know that life is good, even if we don't fully understand life, even if we don't know what's going on with the aliens, even if we don't know what's going on with this Kundalini Shakti and this pressure it's putting and this heat and this fire and this transformation. When you open through your heart and through your belly, the overall experience and transmission is that life is good and that we are here to grow, to open, to explore, to expand. And I invite us all here to see that we have this choice. We have this choice to be the one who opens and expands, or to be the one that shuts down and fights and resists or ignores. And so I welcome you into this space. I thank you for allowing me to speak about one of my favorite subjects, aliens, and UFOs and the unknown. And so I just want to bring my friend into the room here and just see. We see here, my little friend Doodles, and he's on the spiritual path. Now, Doodles is in heaven right now. And he went to heaven this last March. But Doodles, he embraced life with a universal friendliness. Like if you just see, looking into his eyes and feeling into his heart, he had an absolute friendliness to everyone, to all dogs, mean dogs, pit bulls, violent dogs, raccoons, wild animals, skunks. He was never sprayed by a skunk. He was just friendly. Kitty cats, whatever. He was just friendly. And then I have this other dog, Buster, who he's a protector, he's a guarder, he's the watchdog. And he's fighting and growling and barking at the deer and this and that. And he's going to get you. But he's really scared because he's, the same size as Doodles. He's this teeny little thing. And he looks out at life as this fear thing. And, we rescued Buster. He had an abusive childhood, a neglectful childhood. And so, of course, he has that response. But I like to bring up these two archetypes, the scared, frightened ego, or the being, another picture of Doodles here, this being just of absolute light, of absolute love. We have the choice of how to respond. And as we do so, our perspective expands and we begin to feel a unity with life. And in this unity, we discover that life is good, life is divine, Life is beautiful. But I'll say one more thing before I'm done. Is that the ego does have a place. And in the most healthy sense, the ego grows into a quality of discernment where we look out at life and we see, yes, there are real life dangers and we do need boundaries and, we need to, take care of ourselves and this type of thing. And there are frauds and charlatans out there. But we allow our heart to lead us with discernment in our back pocket. Most human beings allow fear to lead them. And it keeps us, like buried in our shell, like a scared turtle. A scared turtle. And so we're going to move into sharing now, but I'm going to invite us just to continue to sit with this question, especially when difficult things come your way. Are you going to unconsciously shut down, or when difficult things come on the path, do you shut down or do you continue to open and love and respond with discernment and clarity and love and strength with whatever arises? How do you respond?